We begin this hour with help coming for veterans ahead of Memorial Day weekend. The Biden administration has announced it has approved more than 1 million claims from veterans injured by burn pits. President Biden signed the Pact Act into law 2 years ago. Burn pits are large areas of waste on U.S. military bases. The trash burned in the open air. Veterans claim that they were injured by toxic exposures and chemicals from those pits, and they've been asking for help. Joining us now, host of the Independent Americans podcast and a veteran of the United States Army and Iraq War, Paul Rieckhoff. Welcome, as always. Nice to see you. This is a major piece of positive news from veterans who have been asking for this. What's your reaction, first off, Paul?
It is good news, Marnie. It's good to know that the VA can move quicker than it ever has before to provide support for 1 million veterans. There's a political piece to this, too. Memorial Day is coming up on Monday, and the White House usually puts out a statement early in the week to try to get ahead of that, to try to bring attention to what they want to. And in this case, this year, it's worthy. It's warranted. The Biden administration has supported the Pact Act, and now we've got about 1 million people who are going to get support. About 5 million have been screened so far, and probably over 10 million will in the next couple of years. So I think it's a good step forward, but important to understand it's really just a tip of a very big iceberg. And it's also a phase of a very, very long fight. Vietnam veterans were fighting for this kind of support a generation ago. We fought for almost 20 years before the Pact Act was finally signed. And folks should remember, this only happened because Jon Stewart and veterans camped out on the Capitol and kind of shamed Congress into doing it. So it took us a long time to get here. It's a good reminder of the stakes that we face in America and that so many men and women who've served in uniform have put forward for us. And around Memorial Day, I just want to encourage every veteran, no matter what your generation, get screened, find out if you're eligible for support, and get the health care that you've earned.
Yeah, this is just one step on the journey to recovery and to help for so many veterans. What's happening with burn pits now? I mean, how has that changed since this has become front and center in the headlines, or it should become front and center?
Well, now everybody knows what they are. I mean, about 15 years ago, Marnie, I used to go on TV and explain to people what burn pits were. And the way I would explain it is, imagine if you took all the trash in your entire neighborhood in a couple of vehicles and threw it in a big pile and set it on fire. And then you had to stay around that for a couple of months. The best example we had before this was really 9/11 exposures. I'm also a 9/11 first responder. Everyone remembers those clouds of dust that surrounded downtown Manhattan. That's what many of us kind of operated in, not just in Iraq, but in Afghanistan and in Kuwait and then the surrounding region. So an entire generation of post 9/11 vets will be served by this support. It also impacts folks who got toxin exposures at Camp Lejeune through the water. And it also goes back to Vietnam veterans who were suffering from Agent Orange. So if you're a veteran and you're watching, contact the VA, get screened, get checked out. And if you don't do it for yourself, do it for your family and do it for the other veterans that will benefit from the science that they are still continuing to gather. Because this Memorial Day, we're going to recognize people who've died in combat. We're going to recognize people who've died by suicide. And we're also going to recognize an increasing number of our fellow veterans who are dying from cancer. And those are cancer exposures due to burn pits. So we got to continue to stay focused on this long past Memorial Day and for a generation to come.
And what does it mean for veterans to be heard on this issue?
Better late than never, Marnie. I mean, we were really scraping and scrapping and banging on pots and pans to get everybody's attention on this for a long time. Biden, frankly, was late to this, but once he leaned in after the State of the Union, he talked very powerfully about his son, Beau Biden, who had served in Iraq, who may have been exposed himself to burn pits, and that could have contributed to his cancer. So it was important to get the president and the members of Congress on board. But I think, as is always the case with veterans issues, it's the veterans and the grassroots, the veteran service organizations, the advocates that had to really push hard to make Congress do the right thing. Unfortunately, the legacy in this country is that it just takes too long for veterans to get the care and support they need. So this Memorial Day, in the midst of all this political division and all this animosity, maybe we can unite around supporting our veterans here at home.
Yeah, amen to that. Paul, I want to talk to you about what's going on in Ukraine. In advance of Memorial Day, 5 leading voices of American veterans have announced this groundbreaking group called American Veterans for Ukraine. I know you're part of it. Tell us about that effort and the mission.
Yeah, I'm one of the co-founders, Marnie, and we think the time has come to organize American veterans in support of Ukraine. Ukraine is the fight of our time. We know the stakes. We know that Putin has an illegal war of aggression he's committing, war crimes, and that the Ukrainians have to be stopped. And what we want to do is stand up here at home and let the Ukrainians know that most American veterans, over 80%, support the fight in Ukraine. We want to support the American veterans' families of those who died. There have been over 40 American veterans who've actually died in combat in Ukraine. We want to support humanitarian efforts. And we want to let politicians know that our veterans care about our national security. We see Ukrainian security and American security as linked. Thursday, we will have a historic gathering of all kinds of veterans at Ukraine House on Thursday in Washington, D.C. We've got folks just back from the front. We've got Ukrainian families and veterans of all political backgrounds who are going to send a message that we're united in support of Ukraine. So we welcome everyone to join us. Go to AmericanVeteransForUkraine.org to find out more.
Paul Rykoff, as always, thanks for all the work you're doing. Thank you mostly for your service and always making time for us here at News Nation.
Thank you, Marnie. Great to see you again.
You as well.